okay? Just so you won't forget us.
I would never forget you.
A few of us are there, the rest are in writing in the back of the...
In your fancy reds, that's beautiful.
Thank
Thank you.
In our fancy reds. And I have a little something extra. Can I read it or do you want to read it? I'm shaking as I'm doing this.
You can read it. Kala.
To Father Anthony, you came through like the wind, a pleasant surprise at that. Justin, Dimitri, you, and Presbytera Elizabeth, all perfectly intact. We waited for you to fill the gap, and you certainly did, just as was said. You filled us with wonderful memories for the times ahead, as we await for someone new to fill our homestead. The children's sermons were ones that we listened, along with the little ones as their eyes glistened. The Epimanikion was one that wait a minute. The Epimanikion was one we had forgotten. And the Epigonation, that was really something. Antiphons, condacions, and all the rest really put the choir to the test. We passed with flying colors, wouldn't you agree? Even though you asked for the organ to play one octave below middle C. Sadly, the time has come upon us too quick for you to leave us for another family. And all of this because Bishop Nicholas had something up his sleeve.
Only something good.
Only something good. Well, okay, for you.
For you too.
Yes, yes. He's sending you to Paul's hometown to relieve his dead, which so much awaits for you so he can rest his weary head. How lucky Memphis is to have you in their midst. How fortunate we have been to have you even for a little bit. We will hold forever close the memories created with you. Lent season, Palm Sunday, and Pascha too. At last we wish you all the best as you settle down in your Memphis nest. Don't forget to Facebook us. Kala.
Kala.
Love you. Love you. And thank God we have Father Jerry. Where's Father Jerry?
Amen.
Father Jerry, thank you for being proud. Whether you like it or not, you're going to stick around. Thank you.
They didn't tell me they were going to do that. But thank you. You can be seated. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart, for myself and for my family. I cannot say how much we will miss you all. Well, I had planned to yell at you a little bit in the sermon, but now I can't do that, so I'll be nice. I wasn't really going to yell at you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The sermon or rather the gospel reading to some degree begs us to yell, not at each other, but at ourselves. This parable of the wealthy man who has a rich harvest and says to himself, I don't have enough place to store my crops. I won't sell them, I'll just store them and set them aside. So I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and then I'll store it all there, and I'll have ample goods to lay up for many years so I can take my ease and eat and drink and be merry. And then God says to him, you are a fool, for even tonight your soul is required of you. You will have no opportunity to enjoy these things that you have laid up. They will be used by another, and you will go to your rest without having prepared your soul. And then he says, so is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Now, you would expect that I would take this as an opportunity to preach a stewardship sermon about how important it is that we give our wealth and our money to the church to support the work of the church and the things of God. But I think the gospel speaks for itself in these terms. We can all see the importance of setting aside part of our wealth, part of our riches, and giving it to the Lord. However, money is very much not all there is to this. And let us consider too, what did the rich man say? Not just, I'm going to keep all of my goods and put them in a barn, but I'm going to then use them to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm not going to work not a day more in my life. Now, that's not really what the Greeks are known for. They work until they're put in the ground, and I think a little bit after. But I would ask you to consider a different reality. If we look at the trend in the churches, one of the biggest days that any community looks forward to as it grows from its infancy into its maturity is the day of the burning of the mortgage, when all of the money is paid back and we own our temple free and clear. Yes? But there is a strange phenomenon that too often follows this. Up to that burning of the mortgage, there is enthusiasm, there is zeal, there is exuberance in participating in the life of the church. The money flows in to reach and achieve this goal, and the people spend all their time thinking about the church, living in the church, working in the church, playing in the church, dancing in the church, learning in the church. And then the goal is achieved. The mortgage is paid off, and a strange thing happens. Once we own the building, it becomes empty. Not all at once, but where once there were activities on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and on Sunday the church was filled to overflowing, soon we only have Greek school on Saturday. Maybe the youth come once a month or once every other month. The church is no longer full on Sunday. Even when it is full, only the children receive communion. I would say that the danger that a church must beware of is to fall into the same trap as this individual rich man. There is a point in our lives as a community when the harvest is plentiful, when the church is full of children, when the newfound wealth of the immigrants is flowing in, when we can afford marble and mosaics and stained glass and an edifice that stands proud on the central street of our city. To what purpose have we built? Have we built in order to fill this place, to make it work, to use it for the glory of God, to fill it with our voices, with our work, with our sweat, with our tears, whether of sorrow or of joy, and with our children, and with those whom we welcome in from outside? Or have we built it to be an empty safe, a strong box to contain the dreams and ideals of a generation that is passing away, with no thought for the future? Too often we are the latter. Too often our goal is to preserve what has been, to lock it up in the barn and sit on it. This is not what we are called to. We are blessed with a multitude of riches. We have the truth, we have the way, we have the life of God in our midst. And we are called to open the doors. You see, I'm preaching the same sermon as I did last week, but with a little difference. We're called to open the doors of the church, of our hearts, of our community, to reach out to those who were born here. One may make the analogy of this man. He took all of his crops and he stuck them in the barn. What about planting them for the future? How was he to have a crop? And again, but he thought, no, I don't need a crop. I have enough to last me until I die. And indeed he did, for he died that day. We have in the registry books of the church a multitude of people who have been baptized and married within the walls of this temple. How many of them are here today? And how many are not? How many lie in their beds right now? How many worship in another church, having left the faith of their forefathers, the faith that they were blessed to be given as infants? How many of them are working today? And if they work, then we think they are working for a good cause. But for the rest, consider it. What can we do to bring them back? Perhaps they have stepped through the doors at one time or another. Did we recognize them? Did we welcome them? Even if we didn't know them, it would be no bad thing to go up to them because we do not know their face and their name and say, hello, my name is Vasily. My name is Panayota. How are you? It's a pleasure to meet you. And if they say, actually, I think you're my fifth cousin 6 times removed, then we'll say, oh, well, then it's good to see you again. But we welcome them. We show them that the church is hospitable, that the doors are open. If someone who has no connection to the church steps through those doors, we should welcome them too. We spoke of this last week. This means as well, and here is the difficult thing, we must consider what is our identity. We are Greek Orthodox, yes? We are blessed to worship in the language in which the apostles preached the gospel in the Roman Empire. The language which the emperors confessed when they bent knee before God. The language that the creeds were written in, inscribing in stone and in paper the truth of our faith. But if young Jimmy, Dimitri, our grandnephew, walks through the door, does he understand what we say? When we say, Ευλογημένη η βασιλεία του Πατρός και του Υιού και του Αγίου Πνεύματος, does it mean anything to him? And much more so for the xenos who walks in off the street, whom we are called to show philoxenia to. Will that mean anything to him at all? This community, if I may speak now specifically, has a difficult identity. We have still in the church so many who themselves came from Greece and built a life and a home in this place. And this church that they built to be a sanctuary, a place of refuge from this strange and alien land, a place in which they could hear the language of the land of their birth and worship as they had been taught from their infancy. Many of you here are their children, their grandchildren, perhaps their great-grandchildren, although I think the great-grandchildren are over in Sunday school. Εμείς δεν μιλάμε ελληνικά. Especially δεν μιλάμε την αρχαία ελληνικά. Ναι? This language of the church becomes a barrier. It can become a door that shuts in the face of those who would come in off the street and those who would come back. It need not be so. Indeed, this language is our glory. It draws people in. No other church can say what we say, that we still read the Bible in its original language. every single Sunday. And some of us even understand it. But we need to think about this carefully, soberly, so that this language becomes a tool. It becomes a means of supporting our salvation and not just a relic of a bygone age and dying dreams. One thing that is done, and is done with great effect, when someone new comes, is for someone who knows the service to take the service book, to bring it to them, and to say, this is where we are. This part is in Greek, this is in English. Follow along, and if you have any questions, ask me. In this way, we teach them that the service can be followed even if it is in an ancient tongue. And it's easy. Any of you can do this. You know the service, or you should. Indeed, you know it better than you may even think you know it. I urge you, pull out the service book and follow along. If not because you need it, so that you can help someone else by means of the service book. And don't worry, I know they're old and tattered, but we will be getting new ones before too long. Many of you have spoken to me about that. There is money for it, and when the new translation is done, either Father Jerry or the following priest will oversee the purchase. So please do not worry about that. I mention this too because it is an effort that everyone may participate in, from the choir to the chanter to the priests to the people. What language will we worship in? How carefully will we approach that? If we stand in the church and hear words that we do not understand, they do us no good. If we follow along, to ensure that we participate from the beginning of the liturgy until the end, whether it is in Greek or in English, then we have been blessed. But if we're standing there bored and disengaged every time the choir goes into Greek, and many of us, God forbid, but it's true, we have built this habit. When the choir goes into Greek, we start paying attention to other things, to what our neighbor is wearing, to who is late and who is on time, to whether the choir is singing in tune, although that is a blessing because the choir is almost always in tune. Take the chance in the church to pay heed to the service, whatever language it's in. And don't complain if it is put into English. I would beg of you. I've honestly never heard a complaint, but I am preaching the sermon because I did it almost entirely in English from the point of the beginning of the consecration today. For the sake of the children, for the sake of the adults, and for the sake of making the point that this needs to be the future of the church. Not that we will ever abandon the Greek, God forbid. But we must ensure that the Greek serves the purpose of prayer. And this requires effort. It requires sacrifice, especially for the older generation. Because if we continue always to worship in the language that you heard in your youth, then God forbid, but the church will be left with none except those who have heard the Greek in their youth. We must strike a balance. Now, I will not be here to strike that balance with you. Father Jerry knows the needs of the community, indeed better than I do. The next priest will learn. But this is a matter for the entire community to take to heart. Whether a matter of language, or of hospitality, or of that simple smile that we practiced last week. To take an active role in building the church for the next generation. To yourself throw open the doors of the storage barn, take out that crop, and sow its seeds, so that the Lord may have a rich harvest, not just today, but in the years and the decades, and God grant it so, the centuries yet to come. It begins with the smallest of actions, with a smile, a handshake, and a little bit of help with that service book. May God give you all the strength and the zeal to open the doors of the church, the doors of your own hearts and the doors of the community, to those who come in from outside and to those who return. Καλή δύναμη σε εσάς και σε εμάς.